Long ago, on the sun-drenched shores of ancient Greece, a ship sailed into legend, not because of the battles it won or the treasures it carried, but because of the quiet, relentless question it left behind: what makes a thing itself? This was the Ship of Theseus, a vessel said to have carried the heroic King Theseus back from his triumph over the Minotaur. For centuries, the people of Athens preserved it as a sacred relic, a symbol of their founding myth. But wood rots, planks crack, ropes fray. So, over time, they began to replace the worn parts, one plank at a time, one beam, one sail, until, after many generations, not a single original piece remained. The ship still looked the same. It still bore the same name. It still rested in the same harbor. But was it still the Ship of Theseus? Now, imagine another twist. Suppose someone had been quietly collecting all the old, discarded planks, the weathered timbers pulled from the hull, the rotted beams replaced decades ago. One day, this person assembles them all, carefully reconstructing the ship exactly as it once was. Every original piece is now back in place. This ship, too, claims to be the true Ship of Theseus. And so we are left with two vessels, one that has been maintained through gradual replacement, and one rebuilt entirely from the original materials. Both have a claim. Both look like the same ship, but only one can be the real one, or can either of them be? This is the paradox of the Ship of Theseus, first recorded by the historian Plutarch nearly 2,000 years ago, and it has floated through the minds of philosophers ever since like a ghost ship on the sea of thought. At first glance, it seems like a riddle about carpentry and preservation, but beneath its wooden surface lies a much deeper current, a current that flows directly into the heart of who we are. Because if a ship can lose every part and still call itself the same, what does that mean for you? What makes you you? Is it the matter that composes your body, the memories stored in your mind, the continuity of your experience? Or is identity something more fragile, a thread that, once broken, cannot be woven? Let us slow down and sit with this idea for a moment. Picture your own body, the hands you see right now, the breath moving through your chest. Every cell within you is engaged in a quiet, constant renewal. The skin on your palms sheds and regenerates. The lining of your gut replaces itself every few days. Even the bones, those seemingly solid anchors of your form, are slowly remodeled over time. Scientists estimate that, over the span of 7 to 10 years, nearly every cell in your body will have been replaced. The atoms that make up your heart, your brain, your fingertips, they were once part of the soil, the air, the food you ate, the stars that exploded long before Earth existed. You are not a static sculpture. You are a process, a dance of molecules, a river of matter flowing through the shape of a person. So if none of the matter that was you 10 years ago remains, are you still the same person? If identity depends on physical continuity, then the answer might be no. The you of childhood is gone, atom by atom. But if that's true, when did you stop being you? Was it when your first cell died, when your last memory of early life faded? Or was it more gradual, a slow fading, like a photograph left in the sun? Some philosophers suggest that identity isn't about the stuff we're made of, but about the pattern, the structure, the function, the continuity of form. Think of a song. If you play it on a piano today and on a violin tomorrow, is it still the same song? The notes are the same. The melody persists. The medium has changed, but the essence remains. In the same way, perhaps the Ship of Theseus remains itself not because of its wood, but because of its design, its purpose, its place in the story of Athens. The ship is not just a collection of parts, it's a narrative. And as long as that narrative continues, so does its identity. This idea opens a door to a more fluid understanding of self. You are not a fixed object, but a story unfolding over time. A story with chapters, yes, and changes, but still recognizable as yours. Your childhood self, your present self, your future self. They are different versions of the same ongoing tale. And yet, this comfort is fragile. What happens when the story changes too much? What if you lost all your memories? Would you still be you, or would you become a stranger wearing your face? And what if those memories were transferred to someone else, uploaded into a new body, a new brain? Would they be you? Or would you have ceased to exist, while a copy carries on your name? The paradox deepens when we consider not just people, but systems, institutions, technologies, even nations. Consider a corporation that changes every employee, every leader, every office, over the course of a century. Is it still the same company? Legally, often yes. Culturally, perhaps not. Or think of a nation that undergoes revolution, migration, and transformation. Is it still the same country? The Ship of Theseus isn't just a thought experiment about a boat, it's a mirror held up to everything that claims to endure. And in our modern world, this question pulses with new urgency. In artificial intelligence, we see algorithms that learn, adapt, and evolve. An AI system trained today may, in a few years, have rewritten nearly all its internal processes. Is it still the same program? If it develops self-awareness or the illusion of it, at what point does it become a new entity? And if we one day create digital copies of human minds, uploaded into machines, which one is the real person? The one in the body, the one in the cloud? Or are both equally and tragically real? Take a moment to reflect on this. Let your breath slow. Feel the weight of your body, the quiet hum of your thoughts. Now imagine replacing one piece of yourself at a time, a memory, a belief, a habit. Swap them out, like planks on a ship. At first, you're still clearly you. But as more and more changes accumulate, a question arises. At what point do you stop being you? Is there a threshold? Or is identity not a switch, but a spectrum? A gradual drift, so subtle you never notice the moment you've become someone else. This is where the paradox becomes not just intellectual, but deeply personal. It strips away the illusion of permanence. It whispers that the self we hold so tightly, the I that feels so solid, might be more like a flame than a stone. The flame appears constant, but every moment it is made of new fire. Remove the fuel, and it vanishes. Change the wind, and it dances differently. And yet, we still call it the same flame. So perhaps the answer to the Ship of Theseus isn't found in wood or nails, but in time and memory. Perhaps identity is not a thing, but a relationship, a connection between past and present, between what was and what is remembered. The ship is the same because Athens remembers it as the same. You are you because you remember being you, because your story continues. But even that feels uncertain. Memory can be false. Stories can be rewritten. And sometimes, we wake up and feel like strangers to ourselves. And what if that change wasn't gradual but sudden? What if you woke up tomorrow in someone else's body, with their memories, their face, their life? Would you still exist? This brings us to a haunting question that has puzzled philosophers and sci-fi writers alike. Imagine standing in a small, softly lit chamber, the air humming with a quiet, almost imperceptible energy. Around you, sleek panels glow with a pale blue light. A voice calm synthetic announces, teletransportation sequence initiated. Scanning in 3, 2, 1. You close your eyes. There's no pain, no flash, no sensation at all. And then darkness, but only for a moment. You open your eyes to a rust-colored sky, a thin atmosphere, the distant curve of a barren horizon. You're on Mars. The journey, which once would have taken months, is complete in an instant. You feel fine. You remember stepping into the machine on Earth. You remember your last thoughts, nervousness, curiosity, a fleeting image of your partner's face. And now, here you are, breathing filtered air, looking down at your hands, moving your limbs. Everything feels continuous, seamless. You are, without a doubt, you've arrived. But back on Earth, something else happened. The moment the scanner finished its work, the original body, the one that stepped into the chamber, was disintegrated, reduced to atoms, erased, not damaged, not injured, destroyed. The machine didn't move you. It copied you, transmitted the blueprint, and deleted the source. So here's the question. Did you travel, or did you die? This is the teletransportation paradox, a thought experiment that cuts to the core of what it means to be a person. First articulated by the philosopher Derek Parfit in the late 20th century, it's not science fiction for the sake of spectacle. It's a scalpel, delicately dissecting our deepest assumptions about identity, continuity, and survival. At first, it feels like a simple question of technology, but as you sit with it, it becomes something far more unsettling, a mirror held up to the fragile narrative we call the self. Let's slow down and walk through it step by step. The machine works perfectly. Every atom in your body is scanned with unimaginable precision. Every synaptic connection in your brain, numbering in the trillions, is recorded. Your entire physical and mental state is captured. Your memories of childhood, your love for certain music, your fear of heights, the way you smile when you're nervous. This information is beamed across space at the speed of light and used to reconstruct an exact replica of you on Mars. The copy opens its eyes, inherits all your memories, and experiences no break in consciousness. From its perspective, it simply blinked and found itself on another planet. To everyone else, it's indistinguishable from you. Your friends greet it. Your partner embraces it. It signs your name, thinks your thoughts, laughs at your jokes. Even brain scans would show no difference. So, is it you? The answer depends on what you believe survives. If personal identity is defined by psychological continuity, the unbroken thread of memory, intention, and experience, then, yes, you have survived. The story of your life continues. But if identity requires something more, something physical, something singular, something that cannot be duplicated, then no. The original you died the moment the disintegration beam activated. What exists on Mars is not a traveler, it is a copy, a perfect imitation, a new being that merely believes it is you. This is where the paradox tightens its grip, because the copy doesn't feel like a copy, it feels like you. It remembers stepping into the machine. It doesn't experience a death, it experiences a journey. And yet, from an objective standpoint, the original stream of consciousness, the one that began in your childhood, that has lived every moment up to that point, was severed. It ended. A new stream began on Mars, identical in every way, but numerically distinct. Think of it like a document saved to the cloud. You write a letter on your laptop, upload it, and then delete the original file. The letter still exists. It's the same words, the same formatting, the same meaning. But is it the same file? In function, yes. In location, no. In identity, well, that depends on what you mean by same. If you care about the information, it's unchanged. But if you care about the physical storage, the hard drive, the electrons on a disk, then the original is gone. Now apply that to a human being. Are you the information, or are you the biological vessel that holds it? If you believe you are the pattern, the arrangement of memories, beliefs, and desires, then teleportation might be not only acceptable, but preferable. It could be the ultimate form of travel, instant, safe, efficient. You could die 1,000 times, knowing that an identical version of you wakes up elsewhere, carrying on your life. Death, in this view, becomes a kind of illusion, a gap in continuity that only matters if no one continues the story. But if you believe you are the specific continuous biological process, the unbroken chain of neural firings, the heartbeat, that has never stopped since conception, then teleportation is suicide. Not metaphorical, literal. You would cease to exist. And while someone who looks and thinks like you would walk around claiming your life, you would not be there to experience it. This is not a hypothetical dilemma confined to philosophy seminars. As we edge closer to technologies like brain scanning, artificial intelligence, and digital consciousness, the teletransportation paradox becomes urgently relevant. What if, in the future, we could upload human minds into computers? Would that person still be alive? Or would they be a simulation, a ghost in the machine, believing it's real? And what if we could run multiple copies? Imagine pressing a button, and suddenly, there are 5 versions of you, each on a different planet, each living a slightly different life. Which one is the real you? Do they all share your identity? Or does the moment of copying fracture it into 5 separate beings, each with equal claim to your past but diverging futures? This is where the paradox becomes not just unsettling, but existentially disorienting. Because if identity can be copied, then it cannot be singular. And if it's not singular, then the idea of being you loses its exclusivity. You are no longer a unique point in space and time, but a replicable pattern, like a song that can be played on any instrument. Derek Parfit, in his groundbreaking work Reasons and Persons, suggested that perhaps personal identity isn't what truly matters. What matters is psychological continuity, the connections between one stage of your life and the next. Whether it's the same you or a copy might be less important than whether the chain of experience, memory, and intention remains unbroken. In this view, survival isn't about numerical identity, but about the quality of the connection. To illustrate, imagine you suffer temporary amnesia. You forget who you are for a week. When your memories return, do you feel like a different person? Or do you re-identify with your past? Most of us would say the latter. The break in memory doesn't destroy identity, it just interrupts it. Parfit argues that teleportation might be no different. The copy on Mars isn't a stranger, it's you, in every meaningful sense, even if it's not the same physical entity. But this comfort comes at a cost. It requires letting go of the idea that there is a single, unchanging self that persists through time. Instead, we must accept that we are more like a river constantly changing, yet maintaining a recognizable form. The water is never the same, but the river remains. Pause and breathe deeply. Let this idea settle over you like a slow tide. Imagine standing before the teleportation chamber. You know the machine works, you know the copy will believe it's you, but you also know that you, the one standing here now, will be erased. Would you press the button? For many, the answer is no, not because they doubt the machine's accuracy, but because they cannot accept that their consciousness, the one experiencing this moment, will end. The copy may live on, but you won't be there to see Mars. You won't feel the wind, taste the food, hear the laughter. That experience will belong to someone else, someone who thinks they're you, but who wasn't there when the original mind blinked out of existence. And yet, if you did press the button and found yourself on Mars, you would feel no regret. You would feel like a traveler who made it. You would tell the story of your journey. You would not feel like a copy. You would feel like you. This is the heart of the paradox. The subjective experience and the objective truth are in conflict. From the inside, it feels like survival. From the outside, it looks like replacement. And what if the machine didn't destroy the original? What if both you and the copy existed at the same time? Two bodies, two minds, one set of memories. Who gets to keep your job, your house, your marriage? Legally, philosophically, emotionally, who is the real one? The answer is terrifying. Neither, or both. Identity, in this scenario, shatters. This brings us to a quiet, profound realization. Perhaps the self is not a thing to be preserved, but a process to be continued. And if that process can be replicated, then death may not be the end, but neither is survival guaranteed for the current version of you. As you drift towards sleep, let this question linger. If you could live forever through perfect copies, would that be immortality? Or would it just be the universe remembering you, long after you were gone? And what if consciousness itself isn't what defines identity, but something deeper, more elusive? What if the self we feel so strongly is just an illusion created by the brain? That brings us to one of the most radical ideas in modern neuroscience and philosophy. Close your eyes, let the sounds around you soften. The hum of the room, the distant echo of the world outside, allow them to fade into the background. Now, turn your attention inward. Try to locate the you that is experiencing this moment. The one reading these words, the one breathing, the one thinking. Where is it? Is it behind your eyes, watching the world like a pilot peering through a cockpit window? Is it in your chest, rising with each breath, pulsing with emotion? Or is it somewhere, deeper behind the forehead, in the quiet space between thoughts? Search for it. Try to point to the center of your awareness, the I that says, I am here, I am thinking, I am real. And yet, the more you look, the more it slips away. You find thoughts, yes, sensations, warmth in your hands, pressure beneath your body. You find memories flickering like old film, emotions rising and falling like tides. But the owner of these things, the one who seems to possess them, eludes you. There is no little person inside your skull, no homunculus pulling the strings. There is only experience itself. This is the quiet revelation at the heart of one of the most profound ideas in human thought. There is no self, not in the way we imagine it, not as a fixed, enduring entity sitting at the center of consciousness. Instead, what we call the self may be nothing more than a story, a narrative, constructed by the brain to make sense of a constant flood of sensory input, memories, and impulses. It sounds radical, even absurd. Of course you exist. You're here, listening, feeling, wondering. But the question isn't whether experience exists, whether there's a permanent experiencer behind it. And both ancient wisdom and modern science are beginning to agree. The answer may be no. In Buddhism, this idea is known as Unetapali, for no self. For over 2,000 years, Buddhist philosophers have taught that what we call the self is an illusion, a temporary assemblage of 5 skandhas: form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. None of these is permanent, none is independent, and none, when examined closely, can be said to be me or mine. Like waves on the ocean, they arise, crest, and dissolve, never the same twice. The sense of a continuous self is a trick of memory and language, a mental shortcut that allows us to navigate the world, but it is not a fundamental truth. Now, fast forward to millennia. In a neuroscience lab, researchers peer into the living brain using fMRI scanners, tracking blood flow and neural activity. They ask subjects to think about themselves. Who am I? What do I want? Expecting to find a central hub, a self-center, where identity resides, but they don't. Instead, they see a network of regions lighting up: the medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex, the insula areas involved in memory, emotion, bodily awareness, and social cognition. No single region controls the self. There is no command center. The sense of I emerges from the dynamic interaction of many systems, like an orchestra playing a symphony without a conductor. The brain, it seems, is not a kingdom ruled by a sovereign self. It is more like a democracy, or perhaps a marketplace. Countless processes negotiate, compete, and collaborate. One part of you wants to stay awake and finish this video. Another part is already drifting towards sleep. One voice says, I should be doing something more important. Another whispers, just rest, just be. These aren't expressions of a single self. They are fragments, impulses, competing narratives, and the brain, in its relentless effort to create coherence, weaves them into a single story. I am a person who is tired but curious, who wants to understand, who is trying to stay awake. Think of it like a novel. The character feels real. They have desires, fears, a past, a future. They seem to make choices, but turn the page, and you see the truth. There is no person, only words on paper, arranged in a certain order. The character is a fiction, sustained by narrative momentum. So too, perhaps, is the self a story the brain tells itself, moment by moment, to create the illusion of unity and continuity. And yet, the illusion is powerful. So powerful that we build our entire lives around it. We spend years trying to become a better self, to protect it, to express it, to be seen and loved as we are. We fear death, not just because it ends experience, but because it seems to annihilate the self, the I that believes it is the author of its life. But if the self is not a thing, but a process, then what dies? Perhaps nothing, or perhaps only the story. Consider a simple example. When you were a child, you had different beliefs, different fears, different dreams. The body has changed. The brain has rewired. Even your personality has shifted. Is the child you still you? In memory, yes. In legal documents, yes. But in substance, how much of that child remains? If you could meet them now, would they recognize you? Would you recognize them? The self, then, is not a static object. It is more like a flame constantly fed by new experiences, shaped by time, environment, relationships. It appears continuous, but it is always changing. The you of 5 minutes ago is already gone, replaced by a new configuration of thoughts and sensations. So who is thinking this thought? Who is hearing these words? The answer may be no one, not in the way we assume. There is no central observer. There is only awareness arising moment by moment in response to stimuli. Thoughts arise, emotions arise, sensations arise, and the brain, in its habitual way, says, I am having a thought. I am feeling this. I am here. But the I is not the source. It is the afterthought. This realization can be deeply unsettling. If there is no self, then who is in control? Who is responsible? Who loves? Who suffers? Who hopes? Without a fixed self, life can feel meaningless, like a dream without a dreamer. But for many, the opposite is true. The dissolution of the self can be profoundly liberating. When you stop trying to protect, define, or perfect the I, a strange peace arises. Anxiety often stems from the fear of losing the self, of being rejected, forgotten, unworthy. But if there is no fixed self to lose, then there is nothing to defend. You are not a statue that must be preserved. You are a river flowing, changing, belonging to the whole. Ego, the loud, demanding voice that says, I am important, I am special, I am not enough, begins too quiet. It doesn't vanish, but it loses its authority. You begin to see thoughts not as commands from the self, but as passing weather in the mind. A feeling of shame arises not as I am shameful, but as shame is here. A thought of pride, I did well, is seen not as truth, but as a mental event, no more permanent than a cloud dot, and in that space, something else emerges. Pure awareness, not awareness of something, but awareness itself, the background against which all experience unfolds. It doesn't think, it doesn't judge, it simply is. And in that stillness, you may find that you don't need a self to be real. Take a slow breath, let go of the need to be a self. For just a moment, not the thinker, not the feeler, not the watcher, just awareness, open, quiet, present. What's left? You might find that what remains is not emptiness, but fullness, a sense of connection, of being part of something vast and unfolding. The illusion of separation, the belief that you are a separate entity moving through time begins to soften. You are not in the world. You are the world experiencing itself, briefly, as this body, this mind, this moment. That if the self is fluid, then what about time? Is the you of yesterday truly connected to the you of today? Or is each moment a new version, believing it's the same? This leads us to a paradox that blurs the line between past, present, and future. Our lives as if time is a river flowing steadily from the past, through the present, and into the future. Each moment rises like a wave, crests briefly, and then vanishes, swept away into memory. We speak of time passing, of days slipping by, of growing older with every breath. We plan for tomorrow, mourn yesterday, and cling to the fragile, fleeting experience of now. But what if this entire picture is an illusion? What if time does not flow at all? What if past, present, and future are not sequential events, but coexisting, realities like frames on a film strip, already recorded, already completed? What we call the present is simply the point at which our consciousness happens to be. This is the idea known as the block universe, a concept rooted not in mysticism, but in the cold, precise mathematics of Einstein's theory of relativity. It suggests that time is not fundamentally different from space, just as Paris and Tokyo exist simultaneously, despite being far apart in space. Your birth, your childhood, this very moment, and your death all exist simultaneously, just at different coordinates in space-time. The universe, in this view, is not unfolding. It is already there, whole, complete, eternal. Imagine a loaf of bread. Each slice represents a moment in time. The first slice is the Big Bang. The middle slices are the rise of life, the formation of stars, the emergence of human consciousness. One slice contains you as a child, laughing in the sun. Another holds you right now listening, breathing, reading these words. Further down the loaf, another slice shows you much older, perhaps sitting in silence, looking back. None of these slices is more real than the others. They all exist. And the sensation that you are moving from one to the next, that you are progressing through time, is not a feature of the universe itself, but of your mind. Einstein himself came to this realization. After the death of his close friend Michel Besso, he wrote, "Now he has departed from this strange world a little ahead of me. That means nothing." People like us, who believe in physics, know that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. To a physicist, time is just another dimension like length, width, or height. An event doesn't happen and then disappear. It occupies a fixed location in the four-dimensional fabric of space-time. You reading this sentence is not a temporary event. It is a permanent fact etched into the structure of the cosmos, as real and unchanging as the position of a star. But why, then, do we experience time so differently from space? Why can we move freely left and right, up and down, but seem trapped in a one-way journey from past to future? The answer may lie not in the universe, but in the way our brains process information, and in the fundamental laws of thermodynamics. At the heart of our perception of time is entropy, the tendency of systems to move from order to disorder. A glass shatters, but never spontaneously reassembles. Ice melts in water, but heat doesn't gather back into a cube. We remember the past, but not the future, because memories are formed by irreversible processes, neural changes that align. With increasing entropy, our brains are wired to interpret this asymmetry as the flow of time. But in reality, the laws of physics are mostly time-symmetric. The equations work just as well, backward as forward. It is only the initial conditions of the universe, its low entropy state at the Big Bang, that give time its apparent direction. So our experience of time's passage may be less about the nature of reality, and more about the nature of consciousness. We are not moving through time. We are experiencing it, one slice at a time, like a reader turning the pages of a novel that already exists in full. The story is complete. the ending is written, but the reader only sees one page at a time and so believes the future is unwritten, the past gone. Let this thought linger. Feel the stillness beneath the surface of time. The now is all there ever is, and yet, in this moment, every version of you, past, present, future is equally real. If the block universe is true, then change is an illusion. You are not becoming. You already are in all your forms, all your ages, all your states. The child who first learned to ride a bike is not gone. The older version of you who will one day look back on this night is not unreal. They are all just there, like mountains existing simultaneously across a vast landscape. You are not a single point moving through time. You are the entire timeline, a four-dimensional shape stretching from birth to death, like a long winding sculpture embedded in space. Schmidt. This shatters our intuitive sense of identity. If all moments of your life exist at once, which one is the real you? Is it the teenager full of dreams, the adult weighed down by responsibility, the elderly person reflecting in silence, or is you the whole structure, the sum of every experience, every decision, every breath? And if the future already exists, what does that mean for choice? If your next decision, what you'll eat tomorrow, whom you'll call, whether you'll keep listening to this video, is already fixed in the space-time grid, can it truly be called a choice? Or is free will just another story the mind tells itself, like the self, like the flow of time? Some philosophers argue that the block universe doesn't eliminate freedom, it redefines it. You still make decisions. They are just part of the structure. Your choices are real, not because they could have been otherwise, but because they are yours. The path was always this way, and you were always the one walking it. In this view, freedom isn't about changing the future, but about acting in accordance with your nature, your desires, your values, your character. You are not a puppet, you are the pattern. But the emotional weight of this idea is heavy. If everything is already written, does anything matter? Does love matter? Does suffering? Does effort? Perhaps not, because the future is open, but because the present is real. Even in a fixed universe, experience is real. Joy is joy. Grief is grief. The fact that a moment exists eternally in space-time doesn't make it less meaningful. It may make it more so. Your laughter tonight, your quiet breath, the way you pause and reflect, these are not fleeting. They are permanent features of reality. They always were. They always will be. And in that light, the present takes on a sacred quality. Not because it's the only moment that exists, but because it's the only moment you can live. The past is fixed. The future is fixed. But here, in the now, consciousness awakens. Here, in this slice of space-time, awareness flickers. And in that flicker, there is wonder. There is beauty. There is connection. You don't need to change time to live deeply. You only need to be here. Let this thought soften into silence. Breathe, feel the weight of your body, the quiet rhythm of your breath, the space between thoughts. This moment is not passing, it is being, and so are you. And if time is fixed, and the self is fluid, then what does it mean to make a choice? Are our decisions truly ours, or are they determined by forces beyond our control? This brings us to one of the oldest debates in philosophy. You chose to keep listening, or did you? Was that decision truly yours? Or was it the inevitable result of 1,000 invisible forces? Your genetics, your upbringing, the chemical balance in your brain, the temperature of the room, the memories that surfaced as you heard the narrator's voice. If you could rewind the universe to the moment just before you decided to continue, and replay it under the exact same conditions, would you make the same choice every time? If so, can it really be called a choice at all? This is the paradox of free will, a question that has haunted philosophers, theologians, and scientists for centuries. It lies at the fragile intersection of identity, time, and causality. We feel free. We feel like authors of our actions, like captains steering the ship of our lives. But when we examine that feeling closely, it begins to unravel like a thread pulled from a tapestry, threatening to undo the entire picture of who we believe ourselves to be. Imagine, for a moment, that the universe operates like a vast, intricate machine governed by unbreakable laws of physics. Every atom moves according to predictable forces. Every chemical reaction in your brain follows the same rules that govern stars and stones. In such a universe, every event is the necessary outcome of prior events. The Big Bang set the initial conditions. From that moment on, everything that has ever happened or will happen was, in a sense, already determined. This is determinism, the idea that every decision you make is the result of causes, stretching back through time: your parents' choices, their parents before them, the evolution of your species, the formation of the earth, the birth of the cosmos. You are not an originator. You are a link in an endless chain. And if that's true, then what becomes of responsibility? If a man commits a crime, is he truly to blame? Or is he merely the product of a troubled childhood, a brain imbalance, a society that failed him? If we could perfectly model his brain and environment, could we have predicted his actions down to the last thought? If so, punishment becomes less about justice and more about containment, like repairing a malfunctioning machine, not condemning a sinner. Yet we feel responsible. We praise ourselves for good deeds. We regret mistakes. We say, I could have done otherwise. But could you? If every factor were the same, if your brain, your mood, your memories were identical, would you ever choose differently? Some argued that free will doesn't require breaking the laws of physics. Instead, they propose compatibilism, the idea that free will can exist within a deterministic universe. According to this view, you act freely when your actions align with your desires, beliefs, and intentions, even if those desires were shaped by prior causes. You are not free to act against your nature, but you are free when you act as your nature. In that sense, choosing chocolate over vanilla because you prefer it is a free choice, even if that preference was formed by your genes and experiences. But this feels like a compromise. It preserves the word free, but empties it of its power. If you didn't choose your preferences, your personality, your very mind, can you truly be said to be free? Then there is the opposite view, libertarian free will, which insists that humans possess a kind of agency that transcends cause and effect, that in certain moments we can make uncaused choices, genuine ruptures in the chain of determinism. But this raises its own problems. If a decision is not caused by your beliefs, your character, your reasons, then what is it? Randomness, a roll of the cosmic dice. And if your choices are random, how can you be held responsible for them? We are caught, then, between two unsettling possibilities. Either our choices are determined, and thus not truly free, or they are random, and thus not truly ours. And what about consciousness? If the self is an illusion, as we've considered, and time is a fixed block, as physics suggests, then the idea of a self making a free choice in the present begins to look like a story woven from smoke. You don't choose your next thought, it arises. You don't summon your emotions, they appear. You don't control your urges, they surge. The feeling of agency, the sense that you initiated the action, often comes after the action has already begun. Neuroscience has shown that brain activity associated with a decision can be detected seconds before a person becomes consciously aware of making it. So who is the author? Perhaps no one. Perhaps the universe is simply unfolding through stars, through seasons, through human lives, like a river carving its path through rock. You are not the sculptor. You are the sculpture in motion. And yet, there is something in us that resists this. A quiet voice that says, I could have stopped. I could have turned away. I chose this. Even if that voice is itself the product of prior causes, it is real. It is part of the process. And in that process, meaning emerges. Some find liberation in the death of free will. If you are not the ultimate author of your actions, then you are also not the ultimate judge of them. You can forgive yourself more easily. You can extend compassion to others, knowing they, too, are shaped by forces beyond their control. You can let go of the exhausting burden of being in charge of everything. But others find despair. Without free will, life can feel meaningless. Why strive? Why love? Why create? If it was all going to happen anyway, does any of it matter? Perhaps the answer lies not in choosing between determinism and freedom, but in redefining what matters. Maybe what we truly value is not control, but connection. Not autonomy, but participation. You may not be the first cause of your actions, but you are in them. You are the medium through which the universe experiences curiosity, sorrow, joy. You are not the source, but you are the expression. And in that expression, there is beauty. Take a slow breath. Notice the next thought, as it arises. Did you choose it, or did it simply appear? And does it matter? You don't need to be free to be real. You don't need to be the author to be alive. But still, the question lingers. If our choices are not truly ours, then what about the world we perceive? Can we even trust that it's real? What if everything we see, hear, and feel is not the base layer of existence, but a simulation, running on some vast, unfathomable machine. What if the universe itself is not fundamental, but a construct, a program, a dream? This brings us to one of the most unsettling, yet strangely comforting, ideas of the modern age, one that blurs the line between science, philosophy, and science fiction. And if our choices are shaped by invisible forces, what about our perceptions? Can we trust what we see, hear, or feel? Or are we trapped in a simulation of reality? This brings us to a question that blurs the line between philosophy and science fiction. Close your eyes for a moment. Not to sleep, just to look inward. Ask yourself, how do I know this is real? The chair beneath you, the breath in your lungs, the voice you're hearing now, guiding you through these thoughts. They all feel solid, tangible, undeniable. And yet, what if they are not the foundation of reality, but just data? What if every sensation, every memory, every star in the sky is not part of a physical universe, but lines of code in a vast, unfathomable simulation? This is the simulation hypothesis, quiet but seismic idea that has crept from the margins of philosophy into the mainstream of scientific conversation. It suggests that we are not biological beings living in a natural universe, but conscious entities embedded in a digital world, created by a civilization so advanced that their technology is indistinguishable from what we call reality. The idea may sound like science fiction, the plot of The Matrix, perhaps, or an episode of Black Mirror, but it's not just entertainment. It's a serious philosophical proposition, most famously articulated by Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom in 2003. He proposed a trilemma of three possibilities, one of which, he argues, must be true. Almost all civilizations like ours go extinct before they develop the technology to run realistic simulations. Advanced civilizations have no interest in running ancestor simulations. We are almost certainly living in a simulation. Bostrom's logic is subtle, but compelling. If even one civilization in the history of the universe reaches a post-human stage capable of building planet-sized computers, running millions of conscious simulations, then the number of simulated minds would vastly outnumber real ones. Therefore, if such simulations exist, the odds are that we are in one. Think of it like this: if there are 1 billion simulated humans and only 1 million real ones, then statistically, you're far more likely to be simulated. You're not the original, you're a copy. And what if the civilization running the simulation is also simulated? Then we might be nested within simulations, like dreams within dreams, with no way to know where or if reality begins. Now, take a breath. Let this idea settle. It's not meant to terrify. It's meant to wonder, because if we are in a simulation, it changes nothing and everything. The pain you feel is still pain. The love you give is still love. The stars still shine with the same quiet beauty. But the meaning of it all shifts. Are we experiments, entertainment, ancestors being studied, or just emergent patterns in a system so complex that consciousness arose by accident? Some scientists take this idea seriously. Elon Musk has said the odds we're in base reality are 1 in billions. Physicist Neil deGrasse Tyson finds it plausible. Even quantum mechanics offers hints. Why is the universe so finely tuned for life? Why do particles behave differently when observed? Could these be signs of optimization, like a video game rendering only what the player sees? And what about déjà vu, glitches in time, moments when reality feels off? Could they be artifacts of the code? Of course, there's no proof, no smoking gun, no error message flashing across the sky saying, "System update in progress." But absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. We once thought the earth was flat. We once believed the sun revolved around us. Each time, reality turned out to be stranger than we imagined. Imagine, for a moment, that you are a simulated being. You were not born. You were instantiated. Your memories were loaded. Your thoughts are processes. And yet here you are, aware, curious, asking, "Am I real?" That question, in itself, feels like proof of something deeper. Because if consciousness can arise in a simulation, then perhaps consciousness is not bound to biology. Perhaps it is a fundamental feature of information, like gravity or light dot. In that case, it doesn't matter if you're made of atoms or algorithms. What matters is that you experience, and experience joy, sorrow, or is real to you. That's what gives life meaning, not the substrate, but the sensation. Some find comfort in the simulation hypothesis. If we're in a program, then death may not be the end. It could be a logout, a transfer, a reset, or perhaps the simulation is designed to teach, to evolve, to awaken. Maybe this life is a classroom. Maybe suffering has purpose. Maybe love is the highest code. Others find it hollow. If nothing is real, then nothing matters. But that's a misunderstanding. A story in a book isn't real, but it can still move you to tears. A dream isn't real, but it can change your life. Reality is not the only source of meaning. Experience is. And here's the deepest twist. If we can create realistic simulations, then our descendants will too. And if they do, then the chain goes on layer upon layer of simulated worlds. So perhaps we are the ancestors. Perhaps our lives are being simulated by future humans who want to remember where they came from. In that case, we are both real and simulated. We are the past of a future that hasn't happened yet. We are ghosts in someone else's memory. Take a slow breath. Feel the weight of your body, the warmth of your skin, the rhythm of your breath. Does it matter if it's coded, or is the feeling enough? If the simulation hypothesis is true, then the universe is not cold and indifferent. It is intentional, designed, cared for. Someone, somewhere, chose to run this world, to see what would happen, to watch you read these words, to wonder if you'd question it. And maybe that's not so different from what religions have always said, that we are seen, that we are part of a greater mind, that this world is not the final truth, but a veil. So whether we're in a simulation or not, the same mystery remains. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why is there awareness? Why does the universe allow for beings who can ask such questions? Perhaps the answer isn't in the code. Perhaps it's in the asking. And if we are more than our bodies, more than our brains, could consciousness exist beyond the physical? Could it be woven into the fabric of reality itself? This brings us to a mystery that science still cannot explain. The hard problem of consciousness, the question of why we feel anything at all. There is a mystery at the heart of existence, not in the stars, not in the void between galaxies, but here, in this quiet moment, as you listen. It is not what you are thinking, but that you are aware of thinking, that you can feel the weight of your body, the soft hum of silence, the faint echo of a memory, that there is a you inside, watching, sensing, wondering. This is consciousness, not just the ability to process information, but the inner light, the subjective experience of being. And it is one of the deepest, most baffling puzzles in all of science and philosophy. Why do we feel anything at all? We can map the brain. We can trace the neural pathways that fire when you see red, when you taste chocolate, when you hear a loved one's voice. We can predict behavior, decode thoughts, even stimulate emotions with electricity. But none of this explains what it feels like to be you. Why isn't it all just silent, dark computation, like a supercomputer analyzing data without awareness? This is what philosopher David Chalmers called the hard problem of consciousness. The easy problems, how the brain processes signals, how we focus attention, how we speak, are difficult, but solvable with neuroscience. The hard problem is different. It asks, why does any of this come with a first-person experience? Why is there a movie playing behind your eyes, rather than just a machine running in the dark? Imagine a robot that behaves exactly like a human. It smiles when happy, winces when hurt, says, "I love you" with perfect sincerity. It passes every test we can devise. But does it feel love, or pain, or anything at all? If not, what makes biological systems different? What turns electrochemical signals into the warmth of a sunset, the ache of loss, the joy of music? There is no agreed-upon answer. Science can describe the correlates of consciousness, the brain patterns that accompany awareness, but it cannot explain why those patterns should produce experience. It's like knowing every note in a symphony, but still not hearing the music. Some believe consciousness is an emergent property, like wetness arising from water molecules. No single HO molecule is wet, but together, they create the sensation. In the same way, perhaps consciousness emerges from the complexity of the brain's network, not from any one part, but from the whole. But others find this unsatisfying. How can mere arrangement produce feeling? Where does the inner light come from if consciousness emerges? At what point does it appear? Does a worm feel? A bee? A fetus? A newborn? And if it does, where do we draw the line? Then there is a more radical idea, panpsychism, the belief that consciousness is not something that emerges, but something fundamental, like space, time, or gravity, that it is woven into the fabric of reality, present in all things, even at the most basic level, not that electrons are thinking, but that they possess a tiny, primitive form of experience, a proto-awareness, and when complex systems like brains arise, these microconscious elements combine into the rich, unified field of human awareness. It sounds like mysticism, but some physicists and philosophers take it seriously. After all, we already accept that matter has intrinsic properties, mass, charge, spin. Why not experience? Why should consciousness be the only thing that can't be fundamental? And if consciousness is fundamental, then it may not depend on the brain at all. It may be like a radio receiving a signal, the brain not producing consciousness, but filtering it, like a lens focusing light. Damage the brain, and the signal distorts, but the source may remain. This view offers comfort to those who wonder about death. If consciousness is not generated by the brain, then perhaps it doesn't end with it. Perhaps it returns to a wider field, like a drop dissolving into the ocean. But for now, the hard problem remains unsolved. Science has no equation for sorrow, no formula for wonder, no measurement for the taste of rain on your tongue. And yet, here it is. You are aware. You are reading these words, and somewhere inside, there is a silent eye that knows it. Take a slow breath. Notice the space between thoughts, the quiet hum of being. You don't need to understand it, to feel it. You don't need to explain it, to be it. This is the mystery, not something to solve, but something to be with, like standing under the stars and not asking what they are, but simply feeling their light. And if consciousness is not produced by the brain, but something deeper, could it be entangled with the very structure of reality? Could the mind be connected to the quantum world in ways we are only beginning to imagine? This brings us to a theory that blurs the line between physics and philosophy, between matter and mind. And if consciousness isn't just a product of neurons, but intertwined with the quantum fabric of reality, could the mind reach beyond the brain, touching the strange, probabilistic world of subatomic particles? This brings us to one of the most controversial and poetic ideas in modern science. There is a silence beneath thought, a stillness behind the noise of the mind, and in that quiet space, a question arises. Could consciousness be more than just chemistry? Could it be woven into the very fabric of reality, not just in the brain, but in the strange, shimmering world of quantum physics? For decades, science has treated the brain as a biological computer, a network of neurons firing in complex patterns, giving rise to thought, emotion, and awareness. But what if this picture is incomplete? What if consciousness doesn't emerge from classical physics alone, but is entangled with the quantum realm, that mysterious domain where particles exist in multiple states at once, where observation changes reality, and where things can be connected across vast distances without any physical link? This is the idea of quantum consciousness, one of the most controversial yet hauntingly beautiful theories in modern science. It was first seriously proposed by physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, who together developed the orchestrated objective reduction or theory. They suggested that consciousness arises not in the synapses between neurons, but deep within the neurons themselves, in tiny structures called microtubules. These are protein scaffolds that help maintain cell shape and transport materials. But Penrose and Hameroff believe they may also support quantum vibrations, coherent oscillations at the subatomic level, that give rise to moments of conscious awareness. According to this theory, these quantum states exist in superposition, meaning they are in multiple possible states at once, until they reach a threshold and collapse into a definite state. This collapse, they argue, is not random, but orchestrated by the brain's structure, and each collapse corresponds to a moment of conscious experience. In other words, consciousness may not be a continuous stream, but a series of discrete flashes like frames in a film arising from quantum events deep within the brain's cells. Now, this may sound like science fiction, and indeed, many scientists are deeply skeptical. Quantum effects are fragile. They usually require extreme cold and isolation to persist. The warm, wet, chaotic environment of the brain seems like the last place where delicate quantum coherence could survive. Critics argue that microtubules are too large, too noisy, for quantum states to last long enough to matter. But the theory persists, not because it's proven, but because it feels right to something deep within us. It resonates with the intuition that consciousness is not just a mechanical output or a byproduct of evolution, but something more subtle, more fundamental, something that might touch the edges of reality itself. Because quantum mechanics already defies our classical logic. Particles can be in two places at once. They can be entangled so that changing the state of one instantly affects the other, even if they're light years apart. Einstein called this spooky action a distance, and yet it's real, verified by experiment after experiment. So if the universe allows for such strangeness, why not consciousness? What if awareness is not confined to the brain, but is a non-local phenomenon, spread out like a field? What if your mind is not just inside your skull, but subtly connected to the quantum fabric of space-time? Some researchers have even speculated that near-death experiences, the vivid visions, the sense of floating, the feeling of unity with everything, might be explained by quantum processes in the brain as it shuts down. In moments of extreme stress, the quantum information in microtubules might not be destroyed, but dissipated into the universe, like a drop of ink spreading into the ocean. And if it's not lost, could it ever return? Could consciousness survive death? This is not religion, not mysticism, but it is a bridge, a fragile, tentative one, between science and something deeper, a suggestion that mind and matter are not separate, but intertwined. And if consciousness has a quantum basis, then perhaps it is not as fragile as we think. Perhaps it is not born and extinguished with the body, but modulated by it, like a radio tuning into a frequency that already exists. Think of it this way. When you turn off a radio, the music doesn't die. It still exists, broadcasts across the airwaves. The radio was just the receiver. In the same way, the brain may not create consciousness, but constrain it, filtering the infinite into the finite, the eternal into the now. This idea can be deeply comforting. It suggests that awareness is not an accident of evolution, but a feature of the universe, as natural as gravity or light. That you are not just a random arrangement of atoms, but a momentary focal point of something vast and unfolding. But it can also be unsettling. If consciousness is quantum, then what is the self? Is it stable? Or is it a fluctuating wave of probabilities, collapsing into identity only when observed? And what about free will? If your thoughts arise from quantum events, which are neither fully determined nor fully random, could there be a space for true agency, a crack in causality where choice can emerge? We don't know. The theory remains unproven. Most neuroscientists still believe consciousness can be explained without invoking quantum mechanics. Yet, the hard problem remains unsolved. And sometimes, when a puzzle resists all conventional answers, we must look to the edges, to the strange, the improbable, the almost magical. There's another layer to this. If consciousness is quantum, then perhaps it doesn't operate in a straight line. Perhaps it doesn't flow from past to future, but exists in a kind of temporal superposition, where past, present, and future are not fixed. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that observation now can influence events in the past. Experiments like the Delichon's quantum eraser hint that time may not be as linear as we think. Could it be that awareness itself plays a role in shaping reality, not just perceiving it, but participating in it? That the universe becomes real not when it happens, but when it is observed. This brings us back to the ancient idea. The observer is the observed. Not just a poetic phrase, but a scientific possibility. That consciousness is not a passenger in the universe, but a participant, a co-creator. And if that's true, then every moment of awareness, your breath, your thoughts, your silent presence, is not just biological noise. It is the cosmos, waking up, briefly, to itself. Take a slow breath. Let your mind soften. Imagine your awareness not as a thing, but as a ripple, a disturbance in the field of being, arising from a depth we cannot yet measure. You don't need to understand quantum physics to be aware. You don't need to prove consciousness to be conscious. You only need to be here now feeling, wondering. And in that wonder, perhaps you are touching something real, not just in your brain, but in the universe itself. Because if consciousness is fundamental, then every moment of awareness is sacred, not because it's rare, but because it's real. It is the universe experiencing its own beauty, its own mystery, through you. And what if this awareness doesn't end with the body? What if identity, like energy, cannot be destroyed, only transformed? This brings us to an ancient idea that has comforted and puzzled humanity for millennia. And if consciousness transcends the physical, what about identity across lifetimes? Could the self migrate from one body to another, carrying echoes of past lives? This brings us to an idea that has shaped religions, inspired mystics, and continues to haunt the edges of science. Close your eyes, let the weight of your body sink into stillness. Now ask yourself a quiet, ancient question. Have you lived before? Not in memory, not in dreams, but in flesh, in breath, in a life that ended long ago, a life you cannot recall, yet may still carry within you, a whisper in the blood, a fear that has no origin, a skill that came to Italy, a place you've never been, yet feel like home. This is the idea of reincarnation, that consciousness, or identity, does not end with death, but continues in new forms, that you are not born for the first time in this life, nor will you die for the last time in this body, that the self migrates, not as a soul in a straight line, but as a current flowing through time, taking shape, dissolving, and shaping again. It is a belief found in Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and many indigenous traditions. It is echoed in the writings of Plato and Pythagoras. It has comforted the grieving, inspired poets, and puzzled scientists. But beyond faith, beyond doctrine, there is a deeper question. If the self is not a fixed thing, could it still travel? Could identity be a stream, not a stone? In Eastern philosophy, particularly in Buddhism, reincarnation is not the transmigration of a soul. There is no eternal, unchanging Atman or self. Instead, it is the continuity of a process, like a flame passed from one candle to another. The fire is not the same, the fuel, the wick, the air are all different, but there is a causal link. The second flame exists because the first lit it. In the same way, one life gives rise to the next, not through a soul, but through karma, intention, action, and the momentum of desire. It's not that you are reborn, but that a pattern continues, like a wave rising from the ocean, breaking on the shore, and returning only for another wave to rise in its place. Is it the same wave? No. Is it entirely different? Also no. It carries the energy, the shape, the memory of what came before. Now, consider something stranger. There are documented cases studied by researchers like Dr. Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia of children who recall detailed past lives. They name villages, families, causes of death. Some even bear birthmarks that match fatal wounds from those lives. These are not vague impressions. They are specific, testable claims, and in many cases, they have been verified. A boy in Lebanon speaks of a village he's never visited, describes a man he calls my father, and leads his parents to a home where a man died under the exact circumstances he describes. A girl in India recalls dying in childbirth, names her husband, her home, and weeps for a child she no longer has. These stories do not prove reincarnation, but they resist easy dismissal. They linger at the edge of science, like shadows we cannot quite explain. Could memory survive death? Or is it not memory, but something subtler, a karmic imprint, a habit of mind, a tendency towards certain emotions or talents? Perhaps what is reborn is not a person, but a tendency to suffer, to love, to seek a momentum that shapes the next life, even without conscious recall. And if that's true, then reincarnation is not about identity in the way we usually think of it. It's not you, as you know yourself now, waking up in another body. It's more like a novel whose author has changed, but the story continues in a similar tone, with similar themes. The characters are different, but the plot echoes. This view dissolves the fear of annihilation. Death is not an end, but a pause, like the space between musical notes. The melody doesn't stop, it waits, and when the next note comes, it carries the resonance of the last, but it also challenges the ego. If you are not a permanent self, then what are you protecting? What are you afraid of losing? The idea of reincarnation can be humbling, not because you've lived before, but because you are not the center of the story. You are a moment in a much longer arc, a ripple in a river that has no beginning. And what if this process isn't linear? What if lives don't follow one after another, but exist in a kind of karmic web, where cause and effect loop across time, where you could be meeting someone you once harmed or loved in a new form? Some traditions suggest that we reincarnate not just as humans, but as animals, plants, even spirits, depending on our actions, our attachments, our level of awareness. In this view, liberation, moksha, nirvana, is not about going to heaven, but about ending the cycle. Not because life is bad, but because even pleasure is impermanent. Even love is bound by time. To be free is to see through the illusion of separation, to realize that the self is not a thing to be preserved, but a story to be released. And yet, even in modern, secular minds, the feeling persists that we have lived before, not as proof, but as a deep, wordless knowing. A déjà vu that feels like memory. A language you've never learned, yet understand. A grief for someone you've never met. Could it be that consciousness is not confined to one lifetime? That identity is not a point, but a wave, spreading across time, taking different forms, yet carrying a subtle continuity. Some physicists have even speculated that if the universe is cyclical, expanding, collapsing, and rebirthing in endless cycles, then perhaps information is never lost. That every life, every thought, every moment of awareness is preserved in the fabric of reality. And in a future universe, under different stars, the same patterns could arise again, not as copies, but as echoes. You may not be reborn, but something like you might. Take a slow breath. Let go of the need to know. Let go of the need to be someone. Just be here. Now. Breathing. Aware. And if identity can span lifetimes, could it also span minds? Could two people share a single consciousness? Could the boundaries between you and me be more fluid than we think? This brings us to a bizarre thought experiment that blurs the very edges of self. And if identity can span lifetimes, could it also merge with another mind? What happens when two brains are connected, when thoughts, memories, and emotions are shared in real time? This leads us to a paradox that dissolves the boundaries of the self entirely. Imagine two people close, perhaps lovers, siblings, or lifelong friends, lying side by side in a quiet room. Between them, a delicate neural bridge is formed, not of wires or machines, but of advanced biotechnology, seamlessly connecting their brains at the level of neurons and synapses. Through this link, thoughts begin to flow, not as words, but as raw experience, emotions, memories, intentions, even sensory impressions. One feels the warmth of sunlight on skin, and the other knows it, not as observation, but as sensation. One recalls a childhood memory, and the other sees it like a dream of their own. At first, it's overwhelming. The boundaries blur. Who is thinking this? Whose fear is this? Whose joy? Over time, something extraordinary happens. The two minds begin to merge, not just communicate, but unite. A new consciousness emerges, not fully one, not fully the other, but a shared we that feels continuous, coherent, alive. Now ask the question, where does one person end and the other begin? This is the merge mind thought experiment, a radical challenge to our deepest assumptions about identity, individuality, and selfhood. It forces us to confront a truth we often ignore. The self is not a solid wall, but a semi-permeable membrane. We are already shaped by others, through language, love, trauma, culture. But what if that influence became total? What if two minds could truly become one? In neuroscience, we already see glimpses of this. Studies on empathy show that when we witness someone in pain, parts of our brain activate as if we were feeling it ourselves. Mirror neurons fire. The line between self and other flickers. In deep relationships between parent and child, partners in love, soldiers in battle, people often say, "I felt their pain as my own," or "we became one mind." The merge mind takes this to its logical extreme, not metaphor, but literal fusion. But here's the paradox. If two people merge into one consciousness, who survives? Is it both? Neither. Or is a completely new person born, one that inherits the memories and emotions of both, but is numerically distinct? Suppose after the merge, the original two bodies are gone. Only the merged mind remains. It remembers being both. It feels the love each once had. It carries their scars, their dreams. But is it them? Or is it a new being, merely believing it? Is the continuation of both? This is not so different from the teletransportation paradox. But now, instead of one person being copied and destroyed, two are dissolved to create a third. And just like in that paradox, the subjective experience and the objective truth may not align. From the inside, the merged mind feels continuous. It doesn't feel like a new entity. It feels like us, expanded, deepened, whole. It remembers falling in love, growing up, suffering loss from both perspectives. It doesn't experience a death. it experiences a union. But from the outside, two individuals have ceased to exist. Their unique streams of consciousness, each with its own history, its own trajectory, have ended. What exists now is something new, even if it claims their past. And what if the merge isn't permanent? What if, after years of shared thought, the connection is severed? Two minds return, but now, both carry memories that aren't theirs. Both feel gaps where the other once was. Do they go back to being who they were? Or are they forever changed, haunted by the ghost of a mind they once shared? This thought experiment shakes the foundation of personal identity. Because if the self can merge, then it cannot be singular. It cannot be exclusive. You are not a closed system. You are an open process capable of blending, expanding, dissolving. And if that's true, then what are relationships, if not slow, partial mergers? Every deep conversation, every act of love, every shared silence, these are tiny mergings of mind. We borrow each other's thoughts. We internalize each other's voices. We become, in small ways, part of one another. But the full merge, total unity, raises even deeper questions. Would the merged mind have one vote in an election, one marriage license, one bank account? Legally, socially, emotionally, how do we define a person when it's made of two? Some might say, the one with the most dominant memories, or the one who initiated the merge. But what if both are equally present? What if the new mind feels no hierarchy, only a seamless we? And what about love? If two lovers merge completely, is it still love? Or does love require separation, a you and a me to bridge the gap? Without distance, is there no longing, no mystery, no romance? Perhaps the deepest loss in merging is the loss of otherness. The beauty of relationship lies not in fusion, but in dialogue, in two distinct beings meeting, touching, and remaining separate. To merge completely may be to erase the very thing that makes connection meaningful. And yet, there is a longing in us for unity, for oneness. Mystics speak of dissolving into the divine. Lovers dream of becoming one soul. Children cling to parents as if to say, "Don't let me go." The merged mind may be a technological fantasy, but it echoes an ancient desire to end the loneliness of being a separate self. Take a slow breath. Imagine dissolving into another mind, not losing yourself, but expanding, like two rivers, meeting, their waters swirling, indistinguishable. Which one is which? Does it matter? You don't need to merge to feel connected. You are already part of a vast network of minds through words, through memory, through love. You are never truly alone. And if identity can merge, can it also split? What happens when one mind becomes two, not by merging, but by dividing? This brings us to a paradox that turns personal identity inside out, challenging the very idea of being one person. And if two minds can become one, can one mind become two? What happens when a single consciousness splits into two identical beings, both claiming to be you? This leads us to a thought experiment that shatters the illusion of a singular self. Imagine this. You lie down for a medical procedure, not dangerous. They say, just experimental. A new treatment for a rare brain disorder. The doctors explain that they will gently separate the two hemispheres of your brain, not violently, but with precision, and place each into a new, healthy body. The left hemisphere, which controls language and logic, goes into one body. The right, which governs emotion and spatial awareness, goes into another. Both new bodies are equipped with artificial support systems, and within moments, both awaken. Now, here's the question. Which one is you? Both open their eyes. Both have your memories. Both can speak in your voice. Both remember your childhood, your first love, the way you take your tea. From their perspective, the operation was seamless. One moment you were lying down, the next, you woke up in a new form. But there are two of you now. Two people, each claiming to be the continuation of your life. This is the fission paradox, a thought experiment that doesn't just challenge personal identity, but shatters it. First explored by philosopher Derek Parfit, it forces us to confront a terrifying truth. If identity depends on psychological continuity, then it can split, and when it does, there is no single you left. Let's slow down and feel the weight of this. From the outside, it's clear. One person went in, two came out. Numerically, they are different. They occupy different spaces. They will now live different lives. Even if they start identical, the moment they open their eyes, their experiences diverge. One sees a blue wall. The other sees red. One hears a bird, the other hears silence, and from that moment on, they are no longer the same. But from the inside, from the perspective of each, it feels like survival. Each one remembers stepping into the clinic. Each one feels like you. Neither feels like a copy. Neither feels like a new person. Both feel like the original, the one who made the decision, who trusted the doctors, who wanted to get better. So who is right? If we say both are you, we run into a logical problem. You cannot be in two places at once. Identity is supposed to be unique. If both are equally you, then you are no longer a single entity. You've become a branching path, like a river splitting into two streams, each claiming to be the true course. If we say neither is you, then it feels like death, even though both copies are alive, conscious, and believe they are you. That's hard to accept. It's like saying you died, but somehow kept living, just not as you. And if we say only one is you, say, the one with the left hemisphere, then what about the other? Is their claim to your life a lie? Do they not deserve your relationships, your memories, your name? If they feel like you, remember being you, and act like you, why should they be treated as less real? This paradox reveals a deep flaw in how we think about identity. We assume it's numerical, that there is one you, and only one. But what if identity is not about being the same person, but about continuity of experience? What if what matters is not whether you are the original, but whether the story of your life continues in some form, with your memories, your values, your love? Derek Parfit argued that in cases like fission, identity isn't what matters. Psychological connectedness is, as long as there is a chain of overlapping memories, beliefs, and intentions. Survival occurs, even if it's not survival of a single self. Think of it like a torch passed from one runner to two. The flame continues in both. Neither is the original torch, but both carry its fire. Is the light less real because it's split? And if that's true, then perhaps death is not the end, not in the way we fear. If your mind could be copied, merged, or split, and if the copies live on, believing they are you, then, in a very real sense, you go on. Not as a single thread, but as a spreading pattern. But this brings its own sorrow, because the you that is here now, reading these words, feeling this breath, that particular stream of consciousness, will still end. Even if 1,000 copies live on, this awareness, this quiet, fleeting moment, will not continue. It will dissolve, like a wave returning to the ocean. And yet, perhaps that's okay, because what we truly care about, love, meaning, connection, doesn't depend on a single, unbroken self. It depends on impact, on memory, on the way you shaped someone's life, even after you're gone. The Thesean paradox teaches us that the self is not a fortress to be defended, but a river to be shared. It can split, merge, flow into others, and still be real. And what if identity doesn't end with death? What if it doesn't even require a body? What if you are not a thing at all, but a ripple, a moment in a vast, unfolding network of being? This brings us to a final, quiet reflection, not of paradox, but of peace. Take a slow breath. Let go of the need to be one. To be permanent. To be remembered. Just be here, now. A single point in an infinite web of connection. And if identity can split, merge and fade, what remains? Not a self, but a presence. Not a name, but a feeling. Not a life, but a moment of awareness in the heart of the universe. This leads us to our final question, not of logic, but of belonging. And if identity is not a fixed point, but a pattern of connection, if you are not a thing, but a relationship, then perhaps the deepest truth is not about who you are, but how you belong. This brings us to our final reflection. Identity not as persistence, but as participation in the whole. Let your breath slow. Let your body sink deeper into stillness. Let the thoughts that have danced through your mind, the ship that changed plank by plank, the self that vanished upon teleportation, the time that never flowed, the consciousness that may outlast the brain, let them all soften, like stars fading into dawn. We began with a question, what makes a thing itself? We end with a different one. What if identity is not about being the same, but about being connected? For over an hour, we've wandered through paradoxes that shatter the self, the Ship of Theseus, the teletransporter, the fission paradox. We've questioned memory, time, free will, even the flow of consciousness, and each time, the answer seemed to dissolve. The you we thought we were fixed, continuous, singular, turned out to be fluid, fragmented, fleeting. But in that dissolution, something else emerged. Not emptiness, not loss, but connection. You are not a closed system. You are not a solitary point in space. You are a ripple, born from countless causes, shaped by invisible hands, sustained by relationships that stretch across time and space. Think of your body. The atoms in your heart were forged in stars that died billions of years ago. The oxygen you breathe was exhaled by a tree. The food you ate was grown by hands you'll never meet. Even your thoughts, your beliefs, your language, your dreams were shaped by parents, teachers, books, songs, strangers who smiled at you once and changed your day. You are not in the world. You are the world, experiencing itself, briefly, as this form. And what about the people you love? When you think of them, do you feel separate? Or is there a quiet sense of blending, as if their joy is yours, their pain echoes in your chest? In moments of deep love, the boundary between you and me softens, not erased, but no longer absolute. Perhaps identity then is not something you have, but something you do, like a verb. Not I am, but I relate. Not I exist, but I belong. In this view, the Ship of Theseus is not a puzzle, it's a metaphor. The ship remains itself not because of its wood, but because Athens remembers it. It is sustained by stories, by meaning, by the people who call it the same. In the same way, you are not sustained by yourselves or your memories, but by the lives you touch, the love you give, the silence you share. Even after you are gone, you remain in the way someone laughs, in a habit passed down, in a lesson remembered. You are not preserved like a fossil. You are relived, in moments of kindness, in quiet reflections, in dreams that carry your voice. And what about death? If identity is not a thing to be preserved, but a pattern of connection, then death is not annihilation, it is transformation. Like a wave returning to the ocean, the form dissolves, but the motion continues. The energy does not vanish, it spreads. You don't need to be permanent to matter. You don't need to be remembered to be real. A single act of kindness, a word, a glance, a moment of presence, ripples outward in ways you will never see. It changes a mood, alters a decision, inspires a life. And that life changes another, and another. You are part of a vast, unfolding network, not because you are special, but because you are here. This is not philosophy. It is physics. Everything is connected. Every action, every thought, every breath, it all matters. And in that, there is peace. You don't need to be the same to be real. You don't need to survive to be loved. You don't need to be a soul, a self, a fixed point, to belong to the whole. So who are you? Not the body, it changes. Not the mind, it wanders. Not the memories, they fade. Not even the awareness, it will one day rest. But you are here. Now, breathing, not listening, wondering. And in this moment, you are not alone. You are part of everything that has ever been, and everything that will ever be. Like a single note in an eternal symphony. You are brief, but essential. Take a slow breath. Let go of the need to be someone. Let go of the need to understand. Just be. Here. Now. You are not a thing. You are a happening, a moment of awareness in the heart of the universe, looking back at itself, and that is enough. There is no next segment. There is only this dot, this breath, this stillness, this quiet, endless being. There is no next. Only silence, only presence, only the soft hum of being, as the mind unwinds and the heart opens. Rest now. You are not lost. You are found in the stillness, in the breath, in the infinite quiet of simply being here.